Welcome back to Born to be a Sports Agent. Today, I have Amber Burdge here, who is the Interim Athletics Director at New Mexico State. And we're going to focus on the evolution of college athletics. So, Amber, I guess really my first question to you is, since you began your career in college athletics, okay,
Mhm.
what are the major shifts that you've seen in the role of student athletes, especially with NIL and the transfer portal completely changing, the landscape?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This has been a wild roller coaster in athletics. There's been so much change that has taken place for the student athletes, for the administrators, for everyone in college athletics. But when you're looking specifically at the transfer portal and NIL, you're no longer seeing student athletes that are coming to an institution their freshman year and staying through the 5 to play 4 and actually developing with that coaching staff and with that development staff, your student athlete development staff, your academic staff, your athletic training, strength and conditioning staffs, who were getting to know those student athletes for that 4 year, 5 year period that they were previously there. And for us, when you look at the fan perspective, the fans are no longer getting to know those student athletes throughout that same time period. It's more of a transient nature. Really, with NIL and with the collectives being what they are right now, it has become more of a transactional nature.
Yeah, so how do you as an AD though make sure that the fans do get to know your student athletes, even if they're only there for a 1 year period?
Yeah, that's something, here at New Mexico State, we have, I believe we're doing over 4,000 hours of community service on a year in, year out basis across our athletic department. So we've maintained that consistent number for several years now. And
Okay.
so being able, obviously minus COVID, but being able to say that we have such a high level of community service, community involvement,
Mhm.
that's one of the ways that our student athletes have got to know the people in the community here in
Mhm.
Las Cruces. But then, we also have a lot of connectivity with some of our support groups. So our goal line club with football, our sixth man club with men's basketball, side out club with volleyball, they do events where, yes, we are fundraising, but they're also getting an opportunity to interact with the student athletes, to get to know the student athletes. I mean, Six Man Club put on an excellent senior day for all. I mean, we had 9 graduating student athletes on our men's basketball program.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, yeah. So, I mean, they put on a great banquet because a lot of the Six Man Club members have followed the growth and development of these student athletes, even though, yes, they've only been here for 1 or maximum 2 years.
Okay. So let me ask you this. How has your job in athletics, and I realize you're the interim athletic director, changed in the last decade? And what new responsibilities or pressures are you navigating that didn't exist when you started?
I think that I'm going to say when I started
Which
in my
where did you
background,
start? Yeah, give me your background a little bit.
yeah, my background is in student athlete development, academic support services. So I got started at Cleveland State, went to Texas A&M Corpus Christi, Stephen F. Austin. I did take a short stint, 4 years out of Division I athletics, and I was the athletic director at Neosho County Community College. So I
Okay.
had a little bit of time in JUCO
Mhm.
before I came back to Louisiana Tech and spent 8 years there before I came here. you know. But during that time, we've seen very few athletic directors come from the student athlete development or academic support side of the house.
Oh, okay.
And there's always been an emphasis on fundraising. And I think that that has stayed the same. So one of the experiences that I've made sure that I've had an opportunity to get, even being from the student athlete development academic support side of the house, was alumni engagement and an opportunity to turn that into fundraising opportunities. And the community engagement and how the community engagement ties into all of your fundraising. So that piece has stayed the same in terms of an athletic director is responsible for fundraising. That is one of their main responsibilities. That is a huge focus for an athletic director 10 years ago. It's still a focus for an athletic director now.
Mm-hmm.
The change is more so, and I was just talking with our president about this earlier this week, but here at New Mexico State, there has been a heavy focus in local fundraising.
Oh,
And that has to shift because as the transfer, and not so much the transfer portal, but more so NIL has come into existence, and we've had the opportunity to, through collectives, provide funding for student athletes' name, image, and likeness. We are consistently going out and asking the same donor for the same dollar over and over and over again. And you hear the term donor fatigue
fatigue. Yeah.
more frequently now.
We could do a whole podcast on that. Well, no, no, I'm
So,
not joking. I hear it. I mean, here at
yeah,
Fresno State, I mean, we have friends, right? Because we've been in this community a long time. Should I donate to the collective? Should I donate to the Bulldog Foundation? I still have my tickets. They're so confused and they're not sure where they want to spend their money. They're confused, honestly. And it's even more
well,
confusing with the case because nobody knows what's happening.
they're confused about where to spend their money, and they're confused about where to spend maybe the bulk of their money. Should it go to NIL because we need help recruiting and retaining talented athletes? Or should it still go to season tickets because we actually need fans in the stands to still be able to recruit and retain talented athletes? Like uh, which one is more valuable to an athletic department? And I think that that's a challenge that every athletic department is facing right now. But really, the transition for an athletic director is, how do you take fundraising outside of what it has traditionally been known as? And how do you find alternate revenue generation modes? And you can look at that as taking fundraising national rather than local,
Yes.
um, kind of activating your alumni base in a way that we haven't necessarily activated an alumni base specifically here, activated an alumni base in the past. And we're trying to find out, okay, hey, if you've never been a season ticket holder, would you consider being a season ticket holder? If you're not going to consider, we have we have alumni who live all across the United States, and it doesn't make sense for some of them to be season ticket holders if they're not going to make it to any of our games.
Right.
So, what avenue then do we provide for those alumni to still become engaged and to provide support for our programs? So, identifying different ways that we can engage our alumni and give them an opportunity to support our programs in a way that makes sense for them.
Have you asked them, like, how would you like to be involved? Or are you guys just kind of starting that? Like, if you ever just asked them, like, how would you like, we need help. Like, how would you like to help? What does help look like to you
Locally, yes, we've asked those questions. We've asked those questions more locally than we have nationally.
nationally?
And yep, I think that we're working with our alumni association to figure out exactly what does that ask look like,
Yeah.
and how do we categorize that information once we receive it. So we're we are going about things in a more thoughtful manner than I think we've probably ever had to go about things, just because you may only get one chance to ask these folks, how would you like to be involved? How would you like to support our athletics department?
Mhm.
And so you don't want to waste that ask on something that wasn't thoughtful and something that's not going to produce exactly what you need to provide the new revenue generation avenue that you're looking for.
Yeah, because I think, some people I know like here, they have a whole new turf and they're putting all kinds of sponsors on the field. Like because that was something they never did, I guess.
Yeah.
So they're
We actually just announced that we are putting Nucinda on our football field. So it's a 5-year deal that we just entered
yeah.
into. Our multimedia rights partner, Van Wagner, helped us with this deal. And, we have White Sands on our basketball court, but now we're going to have it on the football field.
Yeah, so that seems to be, at least that's the shift I see, at least in college football, because if you're on the TV, they can see the field, the whole game. So that
Mhm.
should have quite, I mean, I would think that would have quite a bit of value, honestly, as long as you don't have a conflict. I mean, what's your take on that?
No, those are definitely opportunities that we have been exploring,
Mhm.
but it has been since 2011
Mhm.
that we've done a study that really shows in depth the number of eyes that are on our programs and the different media platforms that we can be viewed from. So now that we're in Conference USA and we've been in Conference USA for 2 years, we need to go ahead and do that study again so that when we are out speaking to a new senda, to a White Sands credit union,
Mhm.
that we have up to date and accurate information to show them about the number of eyes that are on our program on the TV watching our football teams play, and the different platforms that you're going to be able to view their logo
Mhm.
on our field, on our court, on our, wherever else it is that we're able to place their logo because that is where we are now.
Yeah, or you could get the play that goes on for decades because it's some amazing play and there's your logo. I mean, seriously, I mean there's plays
Mhm.
like that, at least in football and basketball, right? They get repeated every single year. So, okay, my last question to you is at New Mexico State, how do you balance staying true to your program, identity, and values while adapting to the national trends that are reshaping Division One athletics?
I think that is staying grounded in knowing who you are. So first of all, you have to know who you are, and we're a land grant institution. So what
Okay.
does a land grant institution stand for? And that is enhancing the lives of our students and our community.
Okay.
Well, how do we still enhance the lives of our students and our community while still paying attention to this national landscape and making sure that we are on the forefront of everything that is happening and not letting any of it pass us by? And that's really a collaboration with campus because, we have a we have an amazing campus. We have amazing faculty on this campus. Our administration is great on this campus. We really need to better, I guess, optimize. Yeah, better optimize the opportunity to collaborate with all of the different groups across our campus. And that's one of the things that I've been looking at throughout this entire summer is who has interest in partnering with us, but more importantly, which partnerships make sense to drive us forward. When we're talking at Conference USA, we're listening to what other schools are doing.
Right.
And, there's one school in our conference and they're collaborating with attorneys and they're collaborating with, business companies outside of their campus.
Mhm.
But there's another school within our conference that was achieving the exact same thing by working with their general counsel and with their college of business. Right. So I've
Yeah,
been
that,
working,
there you go.
yeah, working with our college of business and identifying, what makes sense, bringing in our college of business to work with our multimedia rights partner and identifying are there opportunities for us to, really enhance the deals that Van Wagner is able to make
Mhm.
by involving our college of business, right? And making sure that, we have one partner with Van Wagner who is a graduate of our College of Business.
Mhm.
So making that connection so that that partner is able to come back in as one of the featured speakers in the fall for the College of
Oh,
Business, because they want to be able to speak to those students that are in the College of Business
right.
about their experiences that they've had out in the corporate world, right? And that has nothing to do with athletics, but I needed to make that connection for them.
Absolutely.
So
Plus,
making those connections that make sense, that enhance not just our athletics department and our student athletes, but enhance New Mexico State overall.
yeah, I find students to be so inspiring, honestly. They have some great ideas because they're not working in it, some of them. Some of them maybe in your master's program are maybe working in the corporate world, but they have great ideas that, we're in athletics, so you just kind of sometimes forget that, oh, yeah, that's a really good idea, even though it's from this world over here. So I think I love students. What about the House case? We haven't talked about this, but is New Mexico State going to opt in? What are you guys doing there? Or are you and your
We did. Yep. We did opt in, and we opted in because all of our Conference USA athletic directors,
uh,
prior to me being in this acting AD role, voted together that we are either going to go in altogether or we're not going to opt in altogether. So that was out there, and that was, once there became an opportunity to opt in, that was something that we as Conference USA did together. So we did opt in,
and
and we're going to abide by that.
okay, and then what happens if Judge Wilkins doesn't confirm the settlement? Because I think it's a possibility. I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think she likes the voluntary grandfather in word. She's okay with grandfathering in, but not the word voluntary. So, as an athletic director, why do you think the compromise was we're going to voluntarily grandfather in spots? We aren't going to I wouldn't say guarantee them, but you get what I'm saying? Like, I
I
don't,
do get what you're saying, and I think that that is athletic directors are looking at that. At least I know I am from a budgetary standpoint.
that's what I thought. Okay.
So I'll tell you right now, I have three student athletes. So two programs, one program with two student athletes and one program with one, who our coaches have told me they would fall under this grandfather clause. And
Mhm.
they've said they want to bring, they had the conversation with those student athletes
Mhm.
prior to the end of this year, at the end of their season, they had the conversation, hey, this is coming down. We're going to have these roster limits placed on us. And if that's the case, I don't have space for you. So those student athletes were invited to put their name in the portal. However, they were told if the roster limits are not a part of this house settlement, or if the roster limits change, because for one of these sports, this conversation took place much earlier this year.
Hmm.
If those roster limits were to change, you are you still have a place on this roster.
Okay.
We do want you to come back. We would want you to take your name out of the portal and stay with us.
Hmm.
So, with the grandfathering in opportunity, I knew immediately those two student athletes that I was referring to specifically, they wanted to come back. Their coach wants them back. So we would have them in and they would be our designated, student athletes. The other sport, they have just recently had those conversations, and, the coach definitely wants to have them back on the roster. Other sports, you've heard some of the horror stories about programs saying, well, I'm just going to mark everyone as a designated student athlete, and now I get to have, this enormous roster.
Yep.
At this level, I'm not sure that there are many other Conference USA schools that can afford to have that enormous roster. And so they're
Right.
not, we haven't been quite as fearful of anyone abusing that designation
Mhm.
as I think that we've heard out in the media. And
So you
and
think
you alluded
people
to,
are,
and you asked,
yes, do you think people are abusing it is what you're saying? Yeah, I agree with you. And I can tell you it's probably football coaches
I
having them on
think
the
that there's
roster. They're grandfathered in.
There is the potential for programs to abuse it, but you have to look at it from a student athlete welfare perspective.
Mhm.
And every student athlete that we have on that roster, they're getting uniforms, they're everything, they're taking time.
Yep.
Our coaches are developing, like, we're not going to ignore those student athletes. Our coaches are developing those student athletes on that roster.
Right.
So if we were to have 150 student athletes on a football roster, do I have enough coaches available to provide them the development that they need? Is our weight room big enough that they would all be able to get in at the times that they need to get in? The nutrition that we're providing,
Yeah.
does that increase the amount of nutrition that we would be providing? So that's going to impact in a negative way our budget, right? So we have to be very cognizant of those things. And so we have less fear that they're, or concern, I would say, less concerned that our coaches are going to abuse it, and maybe that other coaches in our conference are going to abuse it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Even do you have enough lockers in the locker room for 140, let's say, football players? Think about that.
We don't.
Yeah,
We
I
have
know. I
a
think a lot of
brand new
people
locker
don't.
room that is
All of those things. So, are there any questions I
fine.
didn't ask you that you want to talk about?
I think that one of the things that everyone is looking at, and I am not real sure if, we want to go there, but just what to do with the collectives. I just
Oh,
met with our collective folks earlier this morning, and we're talking about what their contracts look like, because right now they're writing contracts for these student athletes that we may get to take over. You alluded to earlier what happens if the House case is not signed. And I think that I saw in College AD that chaos would ensue. And then, that's what would happen if the House case was not signed. Because for us, we've gotten enormous support from our administration. Our president has been outstanding.
hmm.
Week ago, we were in at Conference USA meetings, and our football coach walked out of those meetings. Our men's basketball coach walked out of those meetings. Specifically, our men's basketball coach walked out of those meetings, had a big smile on his face, and he ran into the president who was coming into the meetings. And he told our president, I think we're ahead of where some of our conference schools are right now because of the planning and the preparation that we've done, and the involvement that we've involved our coaches in a lot of these conversations to make sure that they're not blindsided with the preparation that we've gone out there and done on their behalf for this House case to be signed.
Yeah. So,
It sounded like not everyone is in the same place that we're in, so that made, I felt really good that made our men's basketball coach very comfortable and confident to thank the president for the work that he's been doing on his behalf
yeah.
to make sure that he's supported and we're able to go out and compete in this landscape.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part is if she confirms the settlement as is, the way they did it with the voluntary grandfathering in, and you do have a collective, which a lot of schools like in Conference USA and Mountain West, they're keeping their collectives, okay? But then everything over $500 is going to be subject to review by Deloitte, and there has to be a valid business purpose. So the deal that you enter into, unless, it's going to be questioned unless it has a valid business purpose. And I think a lot of them, frankly, don't have a valid business purpose. They have to do something for the money, not pay, not play a sport. So there's some confusion. I mean, my concern from the beginning was that because if a booster contributes to a collective, a booster is anybody who contributes over $50,000 over their lifetime, which is most boosters, right? Okay. If they're contributing to the collective and the collective's doing a deal with the player or an athlete and it's over $500, there has to be a legitimate, valid business purpose. And I think that's going to be problematic for most deals. I think they said like 80% of the deals wouldn't have passed muster, right? So that's a concern. Now, hopefully, collectives have put something in those deals that say, by the way, if this goes through, it's going to be subject to review. So this might not be valid. And then the remedy is to renegotiate it. All right. But I think that's another scary, it depends on how your collective dealt with that legally. You know what I mean? In the contracts. What a lot of departments are doing is they're just bringing it all in-house so they can avoid the scrutiny of, they're doing it under the revenue share and they've front loaded
Yeah,
the.
and there's probably not a Conference USA school that's going to reach the $20.5 million cap. So, they're actually leaning a little more toward not keeping their collectives for the most part. Most of the schools that we've seen are not keeping their collective and they're bringing everything in-house.
In-house.
There have been a couple that have come out and said, yes, we will keep our collective, but they've obviously been able to identify legitimate business purpose for their deals. And we do have a good number of legitimate business purposes for our deals. And we feel confident that we would be able to go one way or the other. I think that the nice benefit that we have is that we're working closely with our collective and we're talking with our collective on at the very least a weekly basis to
That's
make
good.
sure that the right hand knows as much as we can know what the left hand is doing and that as much as within the rules we can know and that they but anyway so we're working with them to make sure that the steps that we take and the steps that they take are still in alignment with what we're able to carry out overall if the case is signed and if the case is not signed.
And then how about your women's sports? How are they doing in this space? Do you know? Or how, and Title IX, that's another big question for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of other Conference USA schools that have, and this is something we talked about last week. Everyone has developed a formula where upon which they're distributing or they intend to distribute the revenue share or internal NIL on their campus. So our women's sports are included in that.
Mhm.
And, we've got a few factors that are playing into it. But, the reality is our women's sports are not getting as much as football, men's basketball, but that's what the formula dictates.
Right, I agree. Yeah.
So yeah, we're using a formula that makes sense. And when you talked about staying true to your identity and staying true to your values, that's a piece of it, is that we're making sure that our formula is also true to our values and who we are as an institution. Um, However, we are also having to actually be cognizant of our Olympic sports and our women's programs and making sure that our women's programs can compete.
Right. So where is this money coming from though? The revenue. What if a department has revenue but no profit? Because I feel like there's a lot of departments that don't have a profit. They have revenue, but there's not a positive cash flow.
I think that you're absolutely right. The majority of departments do not have a profit.
Yeah.
So that's exactly where we fall. And so where does that money come from? And I think that goes all the way back to what we initially talked about in terms of the athletic director role
You're right.
changing. And there has to be a shift from that, maybe the way that you were thinking about revenue generation, fundraising in the past to what it has to be now.
Or
And I'm not sure how an athletic director's.
does the collective bucket just go into the, foundation there? You see what I'm saying? Into the revenue share bucket instead of the collective bucket? I mean, that's where I'm a little bit confused.
Well, I think that's going to vary on a campus to campus basis, and
Yeah.
that's going to be determined by what kind of communication have you had with your collective, and what have you and your collective determined will happen moving forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Got it. Okay, well, Thanks for being on my show, and I really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Born to be a Sports Agent. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone navigating the world of college athletics or professional sports. If you want to land the job of your dreams and protect yourself contractually once you do, visit my website at jillmcbridebaxter.com to join my email list and get exclusive access to my proven tools and strategies for coaches, athletes, and sports professionals. Whether you're climbing the coaching ladder, negotiating a new role, or navigating NIL, I'm here to help you succeed with protection. See you next time.